You wanted to talk about firearms. So I wanted to say, we have this general I'm pro Second Amendment, change my mind, which is more broad. However, we just changed the sign right now. That's why it's written like Andy from Toy Story under Buzz's shoe. We didn't expect Biden to issue sweeping executive actions. And so I wanted to specifically talk about this in relation to what is proposed as common sense gun reform, which of course I believe is nonsense, particularly as it relates to Joe Biden's executive actions. Now, are you familiar with the ones he just issued?
I'm not. Can I take a look at
Yes, absolutely. So this is from the White House directly, and the ones in bold, those are kind of the actual actions and then the descriptions of them. And if I understand, you specifically wanted to discuss mental health and the issue of guns,
Yes.
but if you want to read these, no rush, you can peruse them.
Does it say what these strategies are?
And it's kind of like the Green New Deal thing, where then it's just everything thereafter and give us your money.
The thing is, obviously we should have gun laws because you can't just buy a gun willy-nilly.
Right.
But this seems a little... This seems ridiculous in the sense that it's not actually creating any change.
Okay, I'm going to put this on top, not to
block out
hide it from you, but just to make sure that it doesn't blow away.
It seems ridiculous that Joe Biden is using his executive orders almost like, what's the right word?
A dick?
I wouldn't say it like that,
okay,
but
I'm sorry.
In a sense that it's almost like abusing this.
Yeah.
You shouldn't, for the wrong reasons, because what it really is it's a mental health issue. So they should be doing mental health advocacy in schools instead of this. If they're really worried about school shootings and things like that,
Yeah.
you go to the root of the problem. It's not guns, but we should have gun control.
But we do.
I mean, I know a lot of people that have guns that don't have a gun license, especially here in Texas. And I know
You
a
need a gun
lot.
license, but you shouldn't have to have a gun license. But I'm saying when you purchase a firearm, you have to get you go through a background check. You can't be a criminal or a violent domestic abuser.
Well, why shouldn't we have gun license? Like instead of like in the same sense of like a driver's license.
Yeah. Well, because driving is not a constitutional right.
But I mean,
you need ID to purchase a firearm, just as you should need ID to vote. So I think that you should have to present identification to make sure that we know you're of age, we know that you're not a criminal, we know that you're a legal citizen. But have you ever purchased a firearm?
I have not.
Okay, so we actually did this one time where we did a change my mind, and there were a couple of lovely ladies who were to the left, and they didn't know about this, and so we went to go purchase a firearm with them. We took them to the range, kind of educated them a little bit, and then I said, hey, which one did you prefer? And they preferred this firearm, a Walther PPQ, and they attempted to purchase it. It was a long background check. Turned out they couldn't because she wasn't 21, so you have to be 21 for a pistol in Texas. You can be 18 for a long gun. So no, we already have background checks. If you want to conceal carry in some states like Texas, you need a permit.
See, that's all fine with me.
Okay.
But the issue is it's like it's mental health.
So I just want to make sure we have common. So it doesn't sound to me like you're opposed. Yeah, that law-abiding citizens should be able to purchase firearms.
Yes.
Okay.
And I kind of think it like hinders somebody's rights, but the fact that like I know some people that are schizophrenic that have a gun, and I don't think that should be allowed. And is that part of the background check, or is it not?
Well, no, you have to be. So again, there's a standard, and this is the problem with red flag laws.
Okay.
You have to be. I believe the term is adjudicated mentally defective by a court. Because look, I know people. I have, let's say, friends and/or relatives who have bipolar disorder. They should absolutely be allowed to own a firearm.
Yeah, because you're a functioning member of society when you have
not
these
all.
things. Well, yeah.
Not all. Some of them have severe bipolar disorder. Some of them have bipolar disorder that is non-violent.
No, but I mean, like when it gets to a point of severity, then I think that there maybe should be somebody checking in on that.
Well, I think there should be people checking in on that, and that's the issue where, again, you're talking about the severity of a court order, and particularly that's pretty easy to substantiate if this person has already either committed a crime or, even a step further, committed an act that was very clearly dangerous to themselves or others, but maybe not necessarily a crime. You know what I mean? That's something that would be on the record. The issue with, for example, what you're talking about is mental health, and so they use that to sort of warp it into red flag laws. The issue there is...
See, I think that's wrong.
Yes. But a lot of that is, it's predicated on the idea of mental health. They go, well, look, we have a mental health problem, and so why can't family and doctors flag people with mental health issues? It's like, yeah, but now your rights are removed, even though you've not been charged with a crime and you haven't been able to face your accusers, you lose due process.
It's like they're almost manipulating mental health just for their own gain. And Greg Abbott passed some law, like I think last year in Texas schools. They were like, okay, we care about mental health. But in reality, it was just like an elective. It was basically just for show.
Okay. So I guess my question is, you think that mandatory mental health courses would solve?
I think either in schools. I think definitely in high schools and middle schools, you should have either a course, or you should have a licensed psychiatrist or a licensed psychologist on campus at all times that's actually trained and like actually knows what they're talking about and actually provides a safe space for children.
Yeah.
And that's what we need in the schools. And if you did that in every single school, school shootings would go down.
Well, I think if you had armed security guards in every single school, and because that's the one thing that's very consistent, it's like anywhere from the low end 95 to high end 98% of all mass shootings occur in gun-free zones. So places like schools, churches, I don't really think that a social worker is going to help that.
The schools here have armed...
Some of them.
My high school did.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I think it's almost making it a safe space for children, and I don't think necessarily an armed guard versus a psychiatrist or a trusted like mental health advocate.
But if someone wants to go into that school and shoot it up, you don't think that space is safer by having armed guards?
It is safer, but I think you can make it even safer by having mental health, because the kids that are the people that are shooting up schools, they're the children that go to those schools.
Yeah. Well, in a lot of these cases, by the way, a lot of these kids, one of the commonalities too is like the strongest correlation, and I know I took humanities 101 too, correlation causation, but when you look at 98% occur in gun-free zones, another one is the vast majority, something like 80 to 90 something percent of these mass shooters didn't have fathers in the home. And that doesn't get fixed by psychologists in school.
But it could help.
It could help. But I think if we're getting to the root cause of the issue, particularly with mental health, really what we need to talk about is the nuclear family unit and the proper rearing of children. It starts with families before we get to communities or public schools. I mean, look, if more funding, more resources in public schools would solve this problem, then the best schools in the country would be places like Chicago or Detroit or Washington, D.C. It's a system that just doesn't work. It goes into a black hole that is government. I think we need to take it upon ourselves. And what concerns me with laws like this, and it seems like we agree, is this again bestows more power to the government to remove people's individual rights. I have no problem with having psychologists on campus. I do have a problem with where we say mental health, someone shouldn't be allowed to purchase a firearm outside of the realm of what we have, which is officially adjudicated mentally defective, because not long ago, gender dysphoria was considered a mental illness.
Yeah.
And now gender dysphoria is just considered the symptoms of gender identity disorder. However, it still comes with a 42% attempted suicide rate, right? Transgenders doesn't get any better if they go through the surgery and hormone replacement. Nowhere else. So do we say, well, you're transgender, you can't have a firearm?
Absolutely
because you're 42%
not. I mean,
likely to attempt suicide.
No, you shouldn't go off of those things. What you said about the court-ordered thing, I think is a
good standard.
A good standard.
Because it already exists.
Yeah. But
you're talking about helping improve mental health, period, regardless of laws.
Yes, regardless of laws, what it would do is it would just reduce the amount of children that are at the point where they need to do something horrible.
I think so too, and I think, but more important before that is having parents in the household.
Yes, but I think it's an easier way to solve that problem, or at least chip away at that problem, would be to implement use money that you're putting towards these things to put executive orders to put the counselors in schools, because you're not going to be able to go into somebody's house and give them a father.
No, but you could remove laws that accompany the welfare state that encourage single parent households, right, to get twice the benefits. You could remove some of the laws in the books that actually discourage, depending where you are, family units.
Why not do both?
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fine. If you were to offer me the alternative, yes, it's a waste of money. But what we both agree too, it's also grossly unconstitutional.
Yeah.
I mean, look, like I think that I understand where you're coming. And this is one thing I will say. Look, and don't, because women sometimes get offended when I say this. Women naturally are more empathetic than men. Okay, women naturally tend to be more empathetic, walk a mile in people's shoes, and that's a good thing. However, I also think that sometimes what ends up happening, and this is what happens with laws like these, which I'm sure is largely drafted by Harris, and Biden said, okay, and signed it.
Or whoever's puppeting them.
Yeah, exactly. Got no strings to hold me down. Is doing it under the guise of empathy, but it can end up causing more harm than good. And I think it's very important that we look at people's constitutional rights. We look at the fact that the only equalizer, for example, for a woman with a gun, for a woman to ward off an intruder or an attacker, is a woman with a firearm. Women are going to be weaker than men. This is true. There are over 500,000 to 3 million defensive uses of firearms each year. A huge percentage of those are women. And laws like this would allow someone to say, I don't think that someone should be able to say, my ex-wife, she's a crazy bitch. How often do you hear that, right? And then go, we're taking away your guns. You can come get them back in 2 weeks.
Obviously, it has to be founded. You have to have...
Right. But it doesn't with these red flags. You have an example in New Jersey where a doctor got a patient's guns taken away because he kept leaving bad Yelp reviews. I'm using the most extreme example to make a point, but this kind of stuff happens.
Yeah.
Because some states are really loose with it.
I think in any situation where you have a peer being able to report another peer, it's going to be abused.
It also seems Orwellian.
Yeah.
Isn't it scary?
Yeah. It's just, why are they using all of this money when they could be... This country needs more mental health. The kids are not all right.
Yeah. I think if we have more mental health, we'd have far fewer liberals. Far fewer Bidens, because they seem to think this is logical. This is sound reason. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Was it Emily?
Yes.
Emily, I appreciate you sitting down. Thank you very much.
Watch Louder with Crowder live, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern.